sometimes saying things like, move on, let it go. I knew how to, I would, right?
Yeah.
Just be happy. Okay. I'm talking to my aunt, like I'm not. So what should I do?
Welcome to She Ready, a show about innovators and curators and the stories behind their movements. We also discuss notions and emotions behind social issues, dish on our latest dating adventures, and talk about personal development. Hashtag self care. I am Amalika, your host, and today we are talking to Shreya Maheshwari. She's a life coach. She's been practicing since 3.5 years. Previously, she's worked as a marketer in Dubai with various companies, and she did her Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Psychology from Indiana University, Bloomington. In this episode, we discussed a host of topics like quarter life crisis, anxiety, FOMO, finding our life purpose. Basically, topics that every Indian millennial or Gen Z can relate with. Let's get into it. A lot of us are talking about mental health and the importance of talking about mental health. And our generation knows that it's not a taboo to talk about it. But none of us really want to get that help. We know that there's something wrong, but we either don't want to get help or we tell ourselves, oh, it's not a very big issue. I don't need to go to someone who's a professional in this field. Why do you think that is?
So I think there are a bunch of reasons. One, I think we intellectually have understood that mental health is really important, but we do not, on a deep level, associate with it. And I think some of the stigma from the future, from the past generations, has actually passed down to us as well. And so we ask the wrong questions. When you have to go to a doctor, you ask yourself if you have the symptoms. Hey, do I have a fever? Do I have a cold? Do I have a body pain? And then you say, yeah, I have these things, so let me go to the doctor. Are my blood reports fine? Like you ask
Yeah.
yourself questions about, are you okay? Whereas with mental health, you ask yourself, is something wrong with me? Am I the only one who's going through this? Can I cope with this myself? Will people judge me? And these are stigma based questions. So there is this stigma that's still kind of being passed down, and we don't acknowledge it because I think it's also like uncool to acknowledge it. We kind of have this like duality because we intellectually understand that it's okay. The other thing, which I think is also the more human empathetic response, is that it's hard to see things happening to ourselves. And so we feel like, is something really wrong, or maybe it's just a phase, or maybe like maybe I don't actually, like, I'll just be strong and live through this. So the idea of being vulnerable and just facing some of the like harder emotions is what prevents people from coming in. And what they don't realize is that actually when they come in is when things get easier. So even if it is a phase can be like, you can have support through that phase and you don't have to go through it alone. And the person who you come in, so most coaches or therapists, they have their own resources, so they can connect you with a bunch of other people and groups and stuff, so you actually don't feel lonely through that process anymore. But the first step is just accepting that, like, it's kind of like sometimes doing a deep dive and just understanding that, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to like book that first session, which is usually free. The first session is usually free with most. I know with most coaches it's free. I don't know with therapists. I think they charge, but still, like, just book that first session and yeah, and then see how you feel about it.
And what are some of the tangible acts that one can do to overcome this barrier? That no, I shouldn't go, or this is uncool, or I shouldn't talk about it.
Interesting. I've never actually thought about that. But I feel what we can do is ask ourselves the questions of whether you're okay. Are you sleeping 8 hours at night? Are you, do you have healthy relationships? Are you eating your meals on time? Do you have any anxiety about the way you look or the way you perform? If you do have these things coming up, then most probably, like, your day is anyway not going well. You don't feel happy, and you deserve to feel happy. So my entire point with coaching is not so much that, like, you probably will be fine either way, and but why suffer through it? It's your
Yeah.
life. and you get to enjoy it. So you deserve this. I think that switch, that mentality switch, where you ask yourself if you're doing well rather than asking if you need the support, um, is a good approach.
Hmm. It also seems like a good option about self care. I think life coaching is a lot about self care. It's just not these days like face packs and skincare and.
Yeah. So yeah, self-care is the hard stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
you can do self-soothing and like self-pampering exercises, like put a face pack, but the face pack is not going to get rid of suppressed memories. It's not
Hmm.
going to help you build better connections. So
Hmm.
you have to actually address some of the long-term things that will help keep you happy,
Hmm.
uh, which is what coaching does. But yeah, I always say like the first step, like if a person's come to my sessions,
Hmm.
it already shows that they've invested in themselves, because they've
Hmm.
taken that time out and they've said, you know what, like this is difficult, but I'm going to do this for myself.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the different life issues you see in boomers, millennials, and Gen Z clients?
I actually don't have a lot of bloomer clients because I myself am young, and most bloomer clients would go to bloomer coaches.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, my main group of people are from like 19 to 40. So it's Gen Z and millennials.
Hmm.
I feel like that there are actually a lot of similarities. And I
Mm-hmm.
think at our core, across cultures and across ages, we are really the same. But
Okay.
we put on, our routine might be different, and we put on a different voice and face to suit whatever age bracket we are in. But at our core, our pain still sounds just the same, and like heartache still sounds just the same. But in terms of like society, I think millennials are a lot more influenced by previous conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Z is more ambitious to like, so I noticed Gen Z just has a lot more information about the world and
Okay.
environment and the like I think every person is trying to find a purpose and trying to associate with, even if their job is in finance, they will try to make sure that they're working like somehow they kind of like giving back, or like this purpose driven work that's going on there. There are a lot of people who are creating content, or they're artists or anyone, but there's a lot of expression and there's a lot of purpose driven activity. Versus millennials, I think they still like, they're also very high aiming and like high achieving, but some of them are going by um, the rule book, like
Mm-hmm.
this needs to be done so we can get to the next level kind of mindset. That's
Hmm.
a big difference I see. but
Hmm.
but this is also obviously dependent on people, and it
Hmm.
could drastically shift based on what kind of personality comes in.
Yeah. So you spoke about purpose driven work. As a life coach, how have you been able to help find that life purpose for your clients?
Ah, interesting. Most people ask me what my life purpose is. You framed it like that.
Because I think a lot of us ask ourselves, what is my life's purpose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it starts with me, and it starts with the fact that I really chased my dreams at the risk of everything. And so I understand that drive to like like that willingness to give up everything just to find that purpose, and not being happy with life, even if you have everything, just not being happy if that purpose is missing. So I think I resonate very deeply. And then there are a lot of tools that we use, because a lot of times people know what their purpose is, um,
Hmm.
but either there's a block that's keeping them away from actually implementing it, which actually takes us a lot closer, because all I have to do is lift those blocks. And sometimes they have never asked themselves, because they're too scared of what will happen if they give up their current life. So
Yeah.
there's again like that fear surrounding, everything is going well, why should I like leave all of this and go in search of this like mysterious thing out there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so in both cases, if someone is asking themselves what they can do to drive purpose, they're already asking themselves what's out there. And so I would kind of like guide them into their own spirit guide, and help them understand like what is it that's holding them back, because they have the answers.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's a lot of mind mapping and a lot of mindfulness as well, and talk therapy to get over the fears that they possibly have.
Can you give us an example of how you did it with someone? You said you guide them to their spirit guide.
Okay, so this one person was just in a very deep flux because being, a super performer, super achiever, the person has been rewarded for being where they are, but they don't derive purpose from it, and there was constant anxiety about just about life, like not appreciating life because the next big thing was really important, and that next award was really important, and if they didn't get it, that would also be a big slump. In general, all of these people are scared to leave this path because they've seen success on this path.
Hmm.
So part of it is I actually help people get accustomed to failure. So I did work a lot with them to understand what their fears are, get them really comfortable with failure. And once they're comfortable with failure, it's kind of like teaching someone to swim, like you get them, you make sure that they know they don't have to drown. We also go into like what are the risks and then how do we minimize those risks.
Hmm.
So if it's a financial risk, what mark do you have to reach? So making it sizable as well.
Mm-hmm.
Often we tend to exaggerate our fears.
Okay.
So making the fears sizable, minimizing the risks, and then saying, now what's stopping you? Um, and then there's a lot of like ideas about themselves that they've created. Like I have the first in my class, and I have to be, this person at the top of the ladder. And then we do a little bit of like future work. So usually we always work to be in the present and being mindful. But when driving purpose, we look at the future and we say, 5 years from now, what are you going to regret not doing?
Hmm.
And if you regret not doing that, so if there's certain things that you feel like, no, in 5 years I will actually forget about it, I don't care,
Hmm.
and fine, then it's actually not that important.
Hmm.
There is something that you wake up 5 years later and you feel like, I wish I did that, then you owe everything. If you fail at it, you owe your everything to go try it, and then it becomes worth it. I think that, like, it's a lot of talk therapy, honestly, so it's hard to kind of really explain. But I use that as, once I know what that is, I use that as the motivation to drive the person in every.
Hmm.
So it's always like every session we inch a little closer to that goal. And yeah, I have one person who actually quit their master's program because they realized, no, I don't need this. Why am I putting this pressure on myself? Just because I can do it doesn't mean I have to do it.
Hmm.
Another person is where they are, but they're just more content and they've made a lot of travel plans outside of that because that's like what their success fuels this other dream of theirs. So they've started living that dream.
Do you get a lot of quarter life crisis clients?
Yes. I'm laughing so much because I think I was once that person. Yeah, I think it's a real deal, it's because I just think we have so much going on, there's just so many options. And I think our education system isn't aligned with these options, so we study all of these things and then we come out into the big bad world and we're like, now I don't know if I want to do what I studied, and I don't know even what I studied, like out of what I studied, there are like 100 options.
Hmm.
And I could be like a medical student who also feeds dogs, or I could be an artist who designs like these massive, like the Japanese lights. So that's someone who's an artist and a physics student in one. So
Hmm.
I feel like our world has expanded so much that people are free to question everything. And then there's also a lot of information, so you're free to question that too. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. So yeah, I mean, I have dealt with quarter life crisis, and I mean, I've dealt with clients who are going through quarter life crisis, and most times it is about like finding purpose, and other times it is unresolved issues. So either, it's a relationship that breaks that finally brings to light that they're in a crisis. And even the reason they feel they're in a crisis is because they're different from the people or their friends who are going
Hmm.
through the experience. So there's also this phobia of, FOMO and
Hmm.
conforming. So it's just coming to terms with all of that and finding out who you are and being okay with following that path.
Hmm.
Because you can't be unique and fit in at the
Yeah.
same. You know,
Yeah. True. True. True.
that actually studies, so behavioral psychologists have actually studied groups of people. And I'll talk about this one experiment where this professor basically studied two options. So in one semester, the students had to go through a photography class, and at the end of the class, they had to choose their best picture, and that best picture gets blown up, and they keep it for the rest of they get to keep it.
Hmm.
In the other class, they go through the entire semester, and at the end they have to pick two pictures, and then they have to get either one of them printed. So they have to make a choice on which one they want to get printed.
Okay.
And what the study showed is that the people who didn't have a choice, who had to pick one and then that was theirs to keep, they actually felt very high attachment to that thing. They were super happy with their decision, and they really cherished the picture that they got blown up.
Hmm.
The other one couldn't decide, first of all, like which one to.
Hmm.
And then even after they got it back, their satisfaction was just not that good because they kept feeling, did I make a mistake? Should I have chosen the other one? So it just goes to say that choice actually isn't really that good for us.
Hmm.
Yes, having the choice, the freedom to choose is important, but I think we're offered too much of choice. Like even for detergent and for like a bag of,
Yeah.
we can actually like have 8 options at a time. And sometimes we don't need life to be that complex. It's okay, just hand it to us. Yeah.
And in quarter life crisis, you get a lot of people, like you said, they have a lot of FOMO, and they might get a FOMO that, oh, all my friends are getting married, I'm the only single one, or all my friends are traveling and they all have such great lives. But with travel, I think it's something that most of us, I mean, we can deal with it. Maybe I can save up more, or maybe I can take more days off, or I can plan my schedule that way. But with relationships, a lot of people struggle because it's not in their control most of the times. How do you help them with that?
This is actually a very broad question because it really depends on each individual based on what their relationship pattern is and what they are going through in their life. So, why is the relationship not working? Is it because they don't want to commit? Is it because they have other options? Or is it because they really, do not want that lifestyle for themselves? And they're just being forced into it because everyone else is doing it.
Hmm.
So I think one is being okay not conforming. And the minute you do that, you give yourself permission to ask yourself unique questions.
Hmm.
If you might end up choosing the exact same path, but you're now choosing it for yourself, not because everyone else is doing it. And if you're not choosing those same things, I think, social psychology has shown that it is actually hard for people to be different. And I think just generally we were rewarded for being a part of a pack, and
Yeah.
it's really being on the outside. Um, so I always feel like power up by finding other people who are like you. There are so many people. Like our population is bursting at this. So take advantage of that because there is somebody who thinks like you and has the same dreams as you. And working through your dream with a companion makes it a lot easier.
Hmm.
Whether that companion is a romantic one or a colleague or a mentor, it doesn't matter the relationship, but just
Hmm.
find your safe group that you're going to build things with.
That's very helpful, actually.
It's okay to be different. Most of the people who got to where they are, like anyone from, Princess Diana or like Oprah or Jeff Bezos
Or
or
Musk, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, like
Yeah.
they were all considered outliers, and it wasn't easy. They had to be different for a while, and then there's a tipping point where the
Hmm.
world rewards you for that. So
Hmm.
you have to live through that awkwardness, yeah, to receive the benefits.
Do you think sometimes we are standing in our own way of progress?
Yeah, most times we are. Yeah, most times we think the world is out to get us, but it's really like, again, there's a lot of work we do with this. So, what is your block? And we
Hmm.
realize what that block is. It could be a childhood trauma, it could be lack of support or neglect, or just believing that you'll be judged. So, it could be those things. Um, which is still placed inside us, because at the end of the day, that's internal dialogue, and we can carry out changes or whatever from inside of us. And other times, it's also, and I don't like to use this usually, so I would only come to this as the last resort, but it is sometimes also we've become complacent or comfortable in our zone, you know.
Hmm.
So it's easier to say things are difficult than to actually like look at ourselves and work through it.
Hmm.
And so yeah, we do stand in that. It's just because it's comfortable. It's easier to like, we're very change resistant as humans. So it's easier to like stay in our like loopy soup and actually like move past it, and actually like be comfortable with success.
Hmm. And what are your thoughts on imposter syndrome?
Yeah. um yeah, so do you want to actually talk about what imposter syndrome is, or
I
should I?
think it would be best if you explain it to us. What does it exactly mean? Because मुझे कभी feel नहीं हुआ है. Because I'm like, मैंने life में इतना कुछ बड़ा किया नहीं है जो मुझे ये feel होगा. And I feel like, oh, I'm not worth it or I don't deserve it. I never feel like that because I don't think I have achieved something that big. And whatever I have achieved, I definitely feel like, no, I deserve it. And I got it because I worked hard for it.
Hmm. So I'm going to
Yeah.
read the definition. Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud.
Hmm.
So I just think, you know, what you just said, that you worked really hard to get it. I feel like this is ingrained in us, that we have to work really hard to get it.
Hmm.
Especially if you are a person of a certain religion, of a certain color, and if you're a woman,
Hmm.
if you know, are gay or transgender, there
Hmm.
are certain groups that have had to work really, really hard in their life. And
Hmm.
their parents also working hard. So it's kind of generational. And so if you suddenly, like if you land success based on, it could very well be the efforts you have put in,
Hmm. Hmm.
or like a great idea that you had. But when you land success, you feel like, I don't deserve this because it came too easy to me. Why did I not have to work as hard? Why did I not have to, you know, sacrifice as much? And it kind of like very closely resembles, I feel like, what war veterans feel. So it's like this guilt, like
Hmm.
survivor guilt, that everyone else had to do so much and I didn't. So do I deserve a place over here? Do I deserve this title? Do I deserve to have a voice? And so like, even though they have all of that, they would keep underplaying their hand. And it is linked with a certain amount of guilt for the rest of the community. I've definitely faced it.
Hmm.
Um, interestingly, like when I was running my nonprofit organization, it was a team of 10 people and everyone had a title. So the title I had to take on was director of
Hmm.
the program.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't. Like I felt like that's too big a title. Like I didn't do anything to get this title. And at the end of the day, it's just a title, right? Like everyone is doing their share of the work, and I am the person who's running the entire
Hmm.
organization. I'm the founder. So so technically it was the right designation for
Yeah.
me. But I would keep calling myself the manager just because that felt more comfortable and it felt like a job rather than, you know, the ownership. So yeah, I think especially if you belong to any of these categories where you've seen people working really hard and you also have to like prove your worth, those are the moments where you really have to hold down your light and you have to say, I deserve this spot. And rather than wiring it as, am I a fraud for being here? Wire it as, think of how many other people from my community I can get here
Hmm.
just by empowering myself, and, you know,
Hmm.
as a result, empowering them. So that's, yeah, that's how we lift people up, right? And that's a much
Yeah.
better feeling than thinking that you're a fraud.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like some people should have imposter syndrome because sometimes look at people, I be like, तुम्हें होना चाहिए.
Oh.
Especially people who have a lot of narcissistic qualities. I feel like you should have it. But yeah, jokes aside, no, I
You
don't
don't
think so.
know. Maybe they do. Maybe they do.
Then show it to me, please.
me feel more
Yeah.
valued.
Yeah. How can anyone be a better friend or a parent or a partner or a better sibling? I mean, are there any common tools that one individual can apply to all of these roles?
Yeah, listening.
Hmm.
When I say listening, not hearing, but actually listening to
Hmm.
understand what the person is saying, and then accepting it. So we play this game in improv theater
Hmm.
where no matter what the other person says, you have to say yes and.
And yeah.
So yeah, like yeah, yes, whatever. So you can say like, I hate broccoli, I'm not going to eat it.
Hmm.
Yes, and I don't like carrots, but why don't you eat the carrots and I'll eat the broccoli? So there's always a way that you are building on the other person's emotions rather than invalidating it. And this obviously like applies even to really big situations. So if you really listen when someone is saying that they're unhappy with something, we most often like run to like either problem solve or to kind
Hmm.
of say, no, it's not such a big deal, look at all the other people, they're not blah blah blah.
Hmm.
But if you can actually just listen and say, why is that important to you? And okay, like genuine curiosity for why is this person feeling this way? And
Hmm.
even if you don't agree with it, their feelings are valid, their existence and their reality is valid. So yeah, I think listening is like 90% of tool that we all need.
Hmm. What are some of the tools you have applied in your life which help your relationships really flourish?
I applied more tools because I go pretty deep with emotions.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I definitely listening was a very important thing. The other was having very frank, authentic discussions. So even being comfortable with things going out of hand and trusting that like leaving the person with that information will allow them to come back to you. So I became very truth based in my conversations. And when I say truth, not just saying the truth but also not hiding it. So
Hmm.
we often think like but I was honest, but honesty does not mean that you didn't swallow in things, right?
Hmm.
So allowing people to see all of you, and yeah, so having really frank conversations. Empathy goes a very 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 far away because like you have your own story and the other person has theirs, and if you can see the soul in that person. So actually like the word namaste means the soul in me salutes the soul in you.
Hmm.
I actually started like doing that internally, like I started saying that internally, that we are ultimately two souls and we're going through this life journey together. So whatever you are going through is valid and it's okay. I can still draw my boundaries, and I think that's another thing I learned how to draw my boundaries so that I'm not harmed, I'm never depleting myself, but at the same time I'm not depleting the other. So I'm my own soul and I nourish myself, and you are your own soul and you nourish yourself, and I can respect that you know
Hmm.
uh, so boundaries is a very big thing, and I just realized self-care. When I feel good internally, I'm good to other people
Hmm.
internally. So self-care is, I think, like let's put that right on.
Yeah, I feel like listening and empathy is so important because I have been in hostel since I was 15. And you don't have people elder to you or your parents or an elder sibling to really guide you. And that's when I started noticing how kids my age were not such great listeners, or they didn't have as much empathy. And if I would say something, they'd be like, yeah, okay, but you have to move on. I'd be like, I know I have to move on, and I know that it will obviously happen. Life doesn't stop for anyone, but at least hear me out, and you don't have to solve that problem for me. I'll do it, and I know that only I'll be able to do it. But yeah, like you said, they get into that whole, yeah, the problem solving mode, that how do I help this person. They'll be like, yeah, okay, get over it or move on. Of course, whomever you're saying it to will move on.
Mm.
Yeah, but hear them out.
Yeah, and how are you helping them move on. Like sometimes saying things like, move on, let it go.
Hmm.
I knew how to, I would, right?
Yeah.
Just be happy. Okay. I'm talking because I can't, like I'm not. So what should I do? So yeah, we're very deeply attached to our own situation, but we kind of
Hmm.
look at other people's lives in a more 3D view, you know. So sometimes it's important to know, like, yeah, empathy. That's where empathy comes in. That
Hmm.
no, they can't, which is why they're talking to you, and you don't need to fix their problem. They know how to. Just hear them out. Be a sounding board. That's it.
Hmm. Yeah. Coming back to millennials, Gen Z conversation, I feel like a lot of us millennials or Gen Z are not very happy with the way the corporate world works. And we want to do some purpose driven work, but it's just that the paycheck that I'm getting always stops me from actually going and doing something that I would want to do, or something that would make a difference in the world. In all of the clients that you had up until now, how were they able to push themselves to get out of that corporate rut?
I don't think corporate is bad. I think the corporates which treat you like they did in the industrial era, that's bad. And there
Hmm.
are still companies like that who do not treat, do not value their employees, and they don't understand that it's a two-way transaction. They're giving you their services and their brain power so that you can actually earn your whatever millions. So
Hmm.
you do have to value that. Here I'm a little biased, okay? So I'm going to take a very strong stance and say that you should never work for someone who is toxic. I know I've been in an environment like that, and why? Like why? Because you paid for your education. You have
Hmm.
they're benefiting from it, they're profiting. So it has to be a two-way process. And if it is a place where you're not respected, your personal time is not valued, remember that you work to live, not you don't live to work.
Hmm.
And so it's really important to know that this is, if it's very important for you, if that income is really important for you, then this is a temporary option till you find your permanent option. And if that is not important for you, jump out of it right now.
Hmm.
So you and the employers will only learn when employees begin to speak up. Uh,
Hmm.
because otherwise they're really comfortable in like going top down where they make all the profits and the employees suffer out of the fear. So at some point you have to take that control back and force that change. The top down effect is happening very slowly. It is happening, but it's
Hmm.
happening like, top of the league companies and like, or like startups. So
Hmm.
like few companies who are doing that. But there are companies who are doing that. So corporate isn't all bad. You can have, it also does come down to your manager, right? You could have a team and a manager that you really
Hmm.
get along with. And really, that's the only place you should stay. It otherwise really affects your health, your relationships, your sleep, like everything else.
Hmm.
It's not, it's not worth it.
Hmm. As a life coach, how have you been able to help your clients with burnout?
Yeah, don't burn out. um, take time for yourself. Go date. I actually like tell people, like tell me like you have to like go on 3 dates this week and just have fun. Release, like go for an exercise and release endorphins. Go hug a friend. It's so important to live your life.
Hmm.
And burnout is, it's the saddest thing because like you're working so hard for what? Like ultimately you have to enjoy, even if it's your own company, you have to enjoy the celebrations, like the
Hmm.
little milestones for yourself.
Hmm.
And often the people who do get to burnout are also the people who are running away from something emotional, which is why they invest themselves fully in work.
Hmm.
So when we pull back the hours and they actually are told to have fun, some will thrive, and that's great. But if you don't thrive and you're still questioning and there's like anxiety about or guilt about not working that hard, then we address that underlying feeling.
What are I know this is a generic question, but I really want to know what are some of the issues with which I can go to a life coach? Because sometimes it's like it's not a big issue. I'll just talk to a friend. I'll talk to a parent. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
When I mean, if something is happening, when do I tell myself, okay, I need someone. I need someone professional.
Mm. So usually,
Like, I did not realize until you said, like, I've always had anxiety issues. And I know that it's very important to talk about it. And I do. And I talk about it with everyone. Like, my friends know, my parents know. It's not. But I never thought to myself that my sister is also helping people. Why didn't I mean, till you did not say it, that thought did not come into my mind. And now I'm telling mom that I can't wait for Shreya Di to start our session so that I can get over it. I don't want to feel anxious anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to a large extent we are used to handling discomfort, and especially in a country like India, because there's so many bigger problems that discomfort just seems like the stupidest issue to complain about. But you are suffering at your level, whatever that level is, and you don't have to. Some of the symptoms, like I said, like sleep, food, social relationships, these start showing you. These are like the symptoms. If you are, fighting with a bunch of people, or you have disconnections with a few people, or even like anxiety, for example, like prevents you from being happy all the time. Realizing discomfort is not normal. I recently realized PMS is not normal. It has to do with the,
Oh.
yeah, it has to do with the stress and hormones in your body. But we just normalize all of these things because we have so many other bigger things to deal with.
Hmm.
Yeah, don't normalize your discomfort. It's not normal at all. And the other thing is, like you said, I would go out and talk to my friends and family.
Hmm.
So ask yourself two questions. Do I have a support system to talk to about it with no judgments attached at all? Um,
Hmm.
that's amazing, because
Hmm.
that's a great, and that's something we work with even in our sessions. It's something I would usually ask, like, what is your social circle like? Not everyone has that safe space.
Hmm.
If you do, that's amazing, and it will help you get through a lot of tough patches in your life. So
Hmm.
listening into them and fully trusting them is great. um, However, if you're still, leaning on them and trusting them, have you gotten a solution from it, or is it just
Hmm.
venting? Because expressing yourself and venting is necessary, important, but it doesn't fix anything.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like saying, like, my leg's been hurting, I think I have a muscle tear. My leg's been hurting, I think I have a muscle tear.
Hmm.
Comforting that they'll say, like, you can have my seat. Like, why don't I? Yeah, tell me how much it's hurting. I'll listen to you. That is comforting, but you have to at some point also address it and fix it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. A lot of it, I think, is education as well, like just people knowing that this resource is available. Which is why when I reached out to you, I think that's when it kind of, the light bulb went on, and you're like,
Yeah.
available to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a two-way. I think as coaches also, we can't just like wait for people to come to us. We have to also go out and say, like, hey, like, I'd like to connect with you, and I think we can help. So yeah, I think it's a two-way process, and we'll get there. I think our generation, I'm saying our,
It is sort of.
but yeah, I think we will get there, and we are really focusing on mental health in this era. So
Hmm.
I feel like we're much, much closer to, completing that gap than we were before.
Hmm.
Yeah. So thanks to podcasts like you, like a lot of other people are now going to know about this, and just know that you don't have to wait for it to become a big problem. You can,
Yeah.
while it's at its
Yeah.
root.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you don't really realize that you're having all of these issues and you need someone to really guide you.
Mhm.
Before you sign off, I have three more fun questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. What's your current fixation?
I don't know why, but I'm so obsessed with Pratik Kuhad.
Mm-hmm.
I like turn on a candle and I play his music and I go like dancing around. And that's my detox between sessions, because it's, like one song and I just like detox and I'm back like
Hmm.
coach mode. So yeah.
Okay. If you were on a dating app, what would your bio say?
I am on a dating app, and my bio says it says like, what's your love language? And I said that I act like the most annoying parts of my favorite animal. So yeah, I make a lot of like animal sounds and like my nose into people.
What's your favorite animal?
Dogs, but I also like cows, especially like after I lived in Bangalore. I always had like cows outside my door, like mooing all the time.
Okay, so that's your dating app bio.
Mhm.
Okay. If there was one rumor you could spread about yourself, what would it be? I'm not going to help you. If
One rumor I can spread about myself, that I work for the UN secretly.
you can do that. I mean, that's not
I don't know.
secretly.
Oh yeah, or like that I'm an undercover cop.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
That would scare all my clients away.
You can find us on Instagram at She Ready Podcast. I post a lot of behind the scenes stuff, bloopers, and sometimes fun memes. You can email me at shereadypodcast@gmail.com. Please rate and review, and if you do like my content, please subscribe. Thank you for tuning in and see you next week.